A very good day to all of you out there. This is Admav here with another episode of Admav's Corner. It is the 12th of August, 2022, and welcome back. This is a doubleheader weekend. So there's 2 episodes in one weekend, so it's a treat for you guys. Or maybe not, I don't know. But I explained in the previous episode 11, as to why there's 2 episodes this week and why there wasn't an episode last weekend. Basically, without having to rehash everything, I was on a holiday trip last weekend when portaging with friends. And if you want to know how that went, just check out the last episode. In this one, I'm more focused on talking about a specific part of the trip I had last weekend. And that was the secondary trip, the non-physical trip, but the metaphysical trip. And the reason why I call it metaphysical is because 3 of my friends and I went on another trip. Apparently. I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember. You know? We may or may not have had magic mushrooms, aka psilocybin mushrooms. I'm not sure if we did. I'm pretty sure we did. But let's say that we did. We went on this magic mushroom trip. This may or may not have been the first time that we may or may not have taken it. Last year, we may or may not have taken it as well. So, last year's trip was a religious experience. And I didn't have my podcast then, so obviously I wasn't able to talk about it. But it was a religious experience. It was a very powerful experience. And it was, I don't know, just it opened our eyes to something more. And I think it's helped us also in our daily lives. You see, there's actually a lot of research going on right now with magic mushrooms, with psilocybin mushrooms, that talk about how it can help things like PTSD and depression and other things like that of the mental health nature. And so we try to take it while we're on our portage trip, because a magic mushroom trip is all about set and setting. All seasoned magic mushroom consumers will tell you this. It's all about the people that you have and the surroundings that you have. You have to have people that you trust around you to look after you while you're on your magic mushroom trip, as well as a setting that will enhance the trip. And in our case, it was the beauty and nature of Algonquin Provincial Park. So, Kiz, it was our first times. Our second time. Our first time was last year, apparently, possibly. I'm not really sure, actually, but let's say that it was. It was last year. Our first time was last year. So this would be our second time. And our other friend, Houston, this is his first time. And now Houston, that was an interesting one, because he was someone I didn't really ever imagine partaking in this sort of thing, especially with psychedelic substances such as psilocybin. But I mean, I love it. More power to him. I'm glad that he joined us on this adventure, on this trip, and into the world around us and into ourselves. So, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I was really exhausted the day that we arrived at our campsite, and we had planned to go on our trip, our metaphysical trip, the next morning. So I made sure to get lots of rest for that. I made sure that I didn't eat anything. 12 hours before, I just wanted my stomach to be cleared and emptied. Nothing much in my system. so that in the morning when we consume these mushrooms, or did we consume them? You know, it would be absorbed into our bloodstream as soon as possible. Also, you don't want to be too full on these trips, as the come up on the come up with psilocybin is very, can be very nauseating, especially if you've eaten something. And I'll talk a little bit about that later, because there was a bit of an incident involving that. So, morning of, I'm the first one to get up, as I usually am. Got to get ready, got to get my mind right. And I also got to make my rounds and gently wake the group up. Gently woke up Kiz, gently woke up GR, gently woke up Houston. As they're getting ready, I go to where I allegedly stored my magic mushrooms. And I weighed each individual, I guess you could say, dose for all four of us. GR, Kiz, and myself, allegedly we had just under 3.5 grams, which is a 1 gram jump from last year. And Houston, for his first time, did 2.5, or just under 2.5, which was the dose that we took last year. So we sat down, for me, I had a piece of granola with it. Eating it just straight up is fine, but allegedly I had a granola bar with it. A piece, just a small piece. I didn't eat the whole bar. I just wanted a tiny piece. I think a few of us ate it straight up. I think GR ate it straight up. I think Kiz ate it straight up. Only Houston and I ate it with like a piece of granola. So after allegedly consuming this thing, sit down and we just chill, just waiting for things to start taking over, waiting for the psilocybin to unlock our third eye, I guess you could say, just waiting for it to take us on this trip. I'm sitting there and I'm just waiting. 15 minutes in, I start hearing different frequencies. I start hearing different sounds, both high frequencies, low frequencies, and it just started to really ramp up. It just went something like that. I can't replicate the sound with just my voice, but it was the approximation of the sound is something along those lines. I started getting really anxious, and my perception of everything started to change. Everything started to turn sharp. Your vision just turns up, like the clarity goes up, the sharpness goes up, the contrast goes up, the saturation on certain things goes up, and it feels like you're entering another dimension, another plane of a reality. That's what that's what it starts to feel like. And then I was also getting cold. This is the come up, as they call it. This is you're on your way up to the trip, and it's a very it can be very rough. It can be very distressing. You kind of just have to weather that, because at the end of the day, you will be okay. But it is very anxiety inducing and nerve wracking on the come up sometimes. And I mean, we all felt the same way. We were just getting a little bit antsy, and a lot of us were just getting cold. It felt like it was freezing. But for me, the sounds just kept getting more intense. At some points, it sounded like a jet engine just going, and again, I would also hear super high frequencies going, like, what for me, it felt like nature was. I could start hearing nature communicate, like the trees and the mushrooms and everything talking. That's how it feels like when you start hearing those sounds and those noises and just things. You just felt like you were in a different plane of reality. It didn't feel like you were normal. It didn't feel like you were Obviously, you're not sober because you just taken a very powerful psychedelic substance. It's all kicking in now. Half an hour, 45 minutes later, everyone's starting to feel it. Everything's starting to kick in. Sounds start going. My friend Kiz has his notebook out this time because he wants to take notes and sketch stuff while he's on the come up, because it's just really cool to reflect on what you were kind of perceiving. Because when you're in that, let me explain something. When you start to get into that different plane of reality, as I keep saying it, it's really hard to describe that feeling. It's really hard to sort of put into words what that feels like. I mean, you can simplify it. You can say that you feel high or that you're getting high. It's not the same. It's not accurate. I mean, getting high with weed is like, for example, is extremely like simple to sort of describe. Getting high on psilocybin is a totally different story. So, anyways, to come up, we start as usual. We all start to kind of do our own thing, start to wander off on our own for a bit. So GR goes to that. There's a shallow area where there's a big flat rock in the water. He went over there just to sit there, stare at the water. Houston went to some area like by a tree close to the water. Eventually, I went over there by the water as well, and it was very surreal, the feeling, because I remember I brought my chair over, but I just couldn't keep sitting on that chair. I just slowly started to, what it felt like, meld with the ground. Like, this is something I would not do normally if not on any substances, but I started like slowly sliding onto the forest floor by the lake, by the water, and I was just lying flat on my back. I was feeling the dirt and the ground around me and the rocks and the texture of some of the wooden roots around me. I was just feeling everything, and everything was turned up. Like, your senses are just turned up. It was insane. And there was just this constant need to pull my hood and my hair over my face, like as if I was like wrapping myself in a cocoon or something. And that's something my friend and I actually discussed, Kiz, is that it feels like we're going through this phase where we have to cocoon to get ourselves in a cocoon first and metamorphize. Is that a word? I gotta search that up. Is it metamorphize? I think it's metamorphosize, no? Metamorphose. That's the word. It feels like we had to it feels like we have to metamorphose in a cocoon or something during this come up phase. And that's what I kept doing. And whenever I closed my eyes, it felt like I was seeing through like a translucent, like if you were shrunk and you were put into a flower right in the center of a flower, and light was shining through the petals. That's what it felt like. But the colors would change depending on what. It would be like yellow. It would be like blue or red. But then as the come up started to intensify, I started seeing fractals, shapes, changing shapes, the classic images of psychedelics that you see online or wherever. And this was an interesting experience. It's always an interesting experience because I saw colors and crazy patterns. And actually, as I did last year, I kind of saw the words that I was thinking materializing. I could see the letters in my brain, like spelling out the words, as well as fractals. And it was just nuts. And I know it sounds like just crazy ramblings from people who did like this crazy psychedelic drug, allegedly, apparently. I'm not really sure if we did, actually. I think I'm making everything up right now. Yeah, no, it was a crazy, powerful experience. But here's the thing, right? Before going into the mushroom trip, I always tell everybody, like, we have to come in with humility, and we have to come in with some kind of mindset or some kind of question that we're asking or something that we kind of want to find out, especially about ourselves. And for me, I wanted to know if I was going on the right track, because I just felt that things were going well. And maybe that's just me lying to myself. Maybe it's not really going well, and I think it's going well. So that's what I wanted to know from this whole trip. If I was to embark, if it did happen, I'm not sure if it happened, right? Wink. But no. I wanted to know if I was doing the right thing, if I was on the right path. And I was really anxious actually before allegedly going on this magic mushroom trip, because I feared that maybe the magic mushrooms would tell me, wow, you've really tricked yourself into thinking that you're doing well and you're not actually doing that well. I know it sounds crazy, but one time when I closed my eyes and the fractals were going, I started to really try to observe the fractals and try to see it in detail. I just wanted to discern something, anything. And as I looked closer, like, as you know, when the fractals divide and sort of change shape, deep in the fractals where there were like openings, I saw this dark, scary, terrifying face. It was like kind of pale. It's kind of a pale face, dark, with just a deep, stabbing stare. It would just stare at me, smiling with this really scary ass. I mean, I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. This scary grin. This dark figure, this dark entity staring at me. I mean, amongst like the beautiful colors and the beautiful patterns and shapes, in there's this darkness. There's this dark figure just constantly, not saying anything, just constantly smiling and staring at me intensely, just trying to stare right through me. Whew. And at first, I wanted to, I was like, oh, I don't want to close my eye. I don't want to see this thing. I'm terrified. But I was like, wait, no. I can't run away from this. I have to look at this thing. I have to look at this entity. If it's staring at me, I have to stare right back at it. And I closed my eyes, and that's exactly what I did. I just stared at this thing, at this figure, at this person. And I found myself smiling. Not as in a mocking way. Not in a way where I thought that this wasn't a threat or that I wasn't freaked out or scared. No, I realized I was smiling because I love this thing, or that I care about this thing. I'm not angry at this thing for it being so terrifying and the fact that it felt terrifying to me. I wasn't angry at it. Like, I had love for it. And that's when I realized, that's when things clicked. That this dark figure that I see within the fractals, or that I saw within the fractals, was me. But more specifically, it was like the manifestation or the personification of the depression, the anxiety, and the panic attacks that I deal with, that I've dealt with, that I still deal with to this day, that have been a part of me. It was like kind of a reminder that it's still there, but also that it's always there, trying to taunt me, trying to get me to give in to that fear, to that darkness that I've often given into in years prior. But this time I smiled, like I said. But that meant something. That meant something very important. It wasn't that I thought it was a joke. It was that I've accepted this dark part of myself, despite being scary and terrifying and something that I don't want to look at, or at least initially. I smiled. I really thought to myself, wow, yeah, this is kind of scary, but I love this person. I love this thing. And I realized like how far I've actually come into. I realized how much I've progressed in terms of my ability to love myself and to care for myself, because I didn't want to run away from this thing. I didn't want to just be scared and run off. No, I wanted to stare right back at it and tell it, sure, that's fine. If you're in there, you're in me, you're a part of me, and I love you as much as I love every other part of myself. And loving doesn't mean that you're going to forgive yourself whenever you're being like shitty or not being a good person. No, loving just means that you're willing to work with whatever you have. You're willing to work with and appreciate what makes you you. And this thing was a part of me. And I felt it. I felt that care and I felt that love. And so it really, and that's why I say it was the whole experience, this past weekend, with the portage and the camping was life affirming. It's because it is. It really was a life affirming event, because it sort of grounded me, because it helped me realize this thing. It helped me realize the progress I've made and the path that I'm on. And I know it's not going to be like this forever, and I'm eventually also going to have to do other things, and I may have to embark on another path. But for now, I'm doing okay. I'm doing as well as I think I am. That's not to say that I want to be stagnant. That's never what I want to say with these things. But it's just that whatever I'm doing right now, keep going. And that's what the magic mushrooms allegedly revealed to me. At least that's how I feel about it. That's what I really feel about it. And I feel so grateful to have the opportunity to experience that and to learn that. Now, I'm not going to talk about the other experiences that my friends went through, because that's not for me to say or describe for them, because that's only really they can talk about it and expound on it. So I just want to talk about specifically my own trip. But once I got through that part, once I made it through that come up and we reached this plane where it felt like, oh, I saw something important now. Then you get into this phase of the trip where, and this is all from here on out to the come down, this is what it feels like. You get to this point where, listen, if heaven did exist, I gotta wonder if it feels like that. Because when you get to this point of the trip, it's not even that you feel bliss or happiness or anything like that. I mean, you kind of do, but it's more of this overwhelming feeling of being at one with everything and just feeling okay. It's this overwhelming feeling of, yeah, things are fine. Nothing matters. But when I say nothing matters, I say that in a good way. I say that in a way where sometimes you tend to worry about things that you exaggerate. You think about it and you make it sound worse than it actually is. And nothing really matters. Nothing matters like that in the whole grand scheme within the universe. It just, you felt at peace with everything. It feels amazing. And of course the visuals are still there. The water was shimmering like it was a giant piece of like a flat sheet of diamond or something, because it was still early in the morning. The skies were clear. It was just blue, and the sun was shining down, and the water was sparkling. It looked like stars. It was amazing. It was beautiful. And I was spending it with my best friends, and 3 of them were also on the trip and seeing and feeling the exact same thing. And remember when I talked about Houston earlier, and this was his first time, and it's something that he wouldn't do because he's more of kind of like a lot. Well, actually, no, I say that, but he's really all about experiences, so he definitely would have done this. But he's someone I didn't see would ever do this, and for me to hear from him describe similar things that GR and Kiz and I are feeling, it was this beautiful feeling. It was amazing. Life felt so good. It felt like things didn't matter, but things mattered all at the same time. It was just this undeniable feeling of balance. And everything had a golden glow to it. I mean, really, when I think about it, that's got to be what heaven feels like, if there is one, if you do believe in one. I mean, I hope there is, and I hope it's like that, because I could have just stayed in that state forever. I could have just been in that world. That world outside of space and time. That's what it feels like, because when I compare it to the alleged trip that we went on last year, it felt like time never moved when we entered back into that world, into that magic mushroom world. It's like we returned, and it was like the feeling was exactly the same as last year. And it's astounding. I mean, it's just such a grounding feeling. And the only really negative, I guess, I don't even know if it's really negative. It's just something that had to be done. And I mentioned this before about the nausea. Houston, because it was his first time, at one point during the trip, right before, the heavenly part, he threw up. I heard somebody gagging, and I knew instantly it was Houston. I knew it. I turn around to look at him. It's like a water. It's like a waterfall. He's just blah. And I saw and I sensed the concern of our other friends who weren't on the trip with us. But as soon as he looked at me and I looked at him, I knew, oh, he's okay. It's just he had to just get rid of that. Because as soon as he threw up, he just kind of sat back down nonchalantly with a very neutral expression, as if nothing happened. It's just something you had to do. And it's just right back into the trip, into the beauty of the trip. And so it was a grounding experience. It was a great reset, and it just reminded, I think, a lot of us of how beautiful life is, how fleeting life is, and despite having to live as humans in this world, and we have responsibilities and priorities that we need to get to for sure, in the grand scheme of things, nothing matters. A little blip in all of space-time that we live in doesn't matter. But I'm not saying that in a nihilistic way. I'm saying that in the most beautiful way possible. I'm saying that in the capacity of, you should live your life the way you want, the way you feel, the way that gives you meaning, the way that brings you joy. I mean, thinking about it makes me smile. I'm smiling right now. I'm grinning. I'm so thankful for this. I'm whatever, to God, to the universe, for being able to have this. And I really hope that research continues and that it becomes a tool and a resource for everyone, because I really think it would benefit so many people to be able to go on these life-affirming trips. After that trip, we just spent, it was during the last phase of that trip. We spent time with the rest of the guys. We were on the beach, having fun on the water, sitting, just relaxing, enjoying each other and the company that we have, and the setting, the beautiful nature of Algonquin Provincial Park. It was, if there was a perfect day that, if you had asked me, have you ever had a day that just felt perfect? Have you ever had perfect days? That day would be one of those, at least for me. It was amazing. And the connection you feel with people, with these people that I've known for over 20 years, is overwhelming. My best friend Kiz, we were just sitting on the water and discussing, how did we get here? I was sort of having this thought where, imagine being able to reach back to the past and talk to our young selves back in grade 8, and telling us that you and I would one day both be here sitting on the lake. And it was a beautiful moment, and we kind of discussed how sometimes you don't need to verbalize things to communicate. Sometimes you can just sit quietly next to somebody that you love, that you care for, and you'd be having a full conversation without ever saying a word. And that's what it felt like with Kiz and even some of the other guys. It's a beautiful thing. If you have safe access to magic mushrooms, you may or may not want to look into it. And I may or may not be suggesting that you look into it. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I don't know what else. I mean, don't really know what else to say. Actually, I want to end this off now with something that I wrote as a result of that trip. And again, there's parts of this where, anyways, I'll just read it. Everything and nothing matters. Everything fits. Nothing out of place. You are exactly where you need to be. Take care, everyone. See you next week.